I thought the Appalachian Trail would be my escape, a way to clear my head after everything fell apart. It was supposed to be peaceful, a solo trek through the mountains to remind myself that I could handle being alone. I thought I was prepared for the isolation, for the silence. I never expected what I found out there. The first few days felt like freedom. The cool mountain air, the towering trees, and the endless sky above, everything was as beautiful as I'd imagined. I was proud of myself too. Not everyone has the guts to hike this trail alone, but I needed to prove I could. But on the second day, something strange happened. I heard a whistling. It wasn't loud, just faint enough to make me stop and listen, wondering where it was coming from. It wasn't the wind or a bird, at least not one I'd ever heard. The sound drifted through the trees for a few minutes, then stopped abruptly. I shrugged it off, telling myself it was probably just some weird wildlife call. It was a forest, after all, plenty of sounds I didn't recognize. But the next day I heard it again. The same low, eerie whistle. It came around midday, just like before, drifting on the wind like it was following me. I scanned the woods around me, looking for a source, but saw nothing. No one was around for miles, no hikers, no animals in sight. Just me and that damn whistling. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was still probably just a bird. But a small knot of unease twisted in my gut. By the third day, the whistle had become a part of my routine. Every day, without fail, I'd hear it. It always came around the same time, always faint, always seeming to follow me. I couldn't pinpoint where it was coming from, and no matter how much I searched the trees, I could never see anything. The more I tried to ignore it, the more it got under my skin. The unease kept building, but I told myself to keep moving forward. I didn't want to give in to fear. But that didn't stop the knot in my stomach from tightening every time the sound returned. It felt deliberate, like someone or something was out there watching me. By the fifth night, I was terrified. The strange events that had been happening weren't helping. Every morning, I'd wake up to find my things moved, boots outside the tent, my pack emptied, my gear scattered. But the worst part was the feeling of being watched. Every gust of wind, every rustling leaf made my skin crawl. The sense that I wasn't alone was overwhelming, but no matter how much I scanned the woods, I saw no one. That night, desperate for answers, I set up my action camera, pointing it at the entrance of my tent. I needed proof, needed to know what was going on while I slept. I tried to calm myself, but that whistling, it wouldn't leave my mind. I'd heard it again that day, just like always, faint and distant, but constant. It felt like a warning. I couldn't sleep that night. Every sound outside the tent made me jump, my nerves stretched thin. I lay there, staring up at the ceiling, willing myself to fall asleep. Eventually, exhaustion took over. When I woke up, the campsite was a mess again. My boots were outside, my pack overturned. But something was different this time. I felt it in the air like an invisible weight pressing down on me. The woods were too quiet, too still. My hands trembled as I grabbed the camera and pressed play. The footage started normal, just my tent in the moonlight, the trees swaying gently. But a little after 3 a.m. I heard it. The whistling. It started faint, almost imperceptible at first, then grew louder, closer. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched the screen, my breath coming in short gasps. And then the tent flap slowly moved. I stared in horror as the zipper was pulled open, deliberately, carefully, like someone was trying not to wake me. At first I saw nothing but the blackness outside, just the faint outline of trees. But then a figure appeared at the edge of the tent. It was me. Or at least it looked like me. The figure crawled inside, its face partially obscured in shadow, but the resemblance was unmistakable. It wore my clothes, moved like I did, but something about it was wrong. Its movements were too slow, too deliberate, like it was mimicking me rather than being me. I watched in paralyzed terror as the figure stood inside the tent, looking down at my sleeping body. It crouched beside me, so close I could almost feel its breath. Its face hovered just inches from mine, watching, waiting. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I watched the thing that looked like me, crouching over my sleeping form, its eyes, my eyes, wide open, unblinking. And then, as suddenly as it had come, it stood up. Slowly, it turned toward the entrance, unzipping the tent flap again. But before it stepped out, it paused, and then it whistled. The same low, eerie whistle I'd been hearing every day of the hike. It sounded almost casual, like a parting gesture. The figure stepped outside, zipped the tent closed, and disappeared into the darkness. The camera kept recording, but the whistling continued for a few moments longer, fading into the night. I sat there, numb, staring at the screen. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what I'd just seen. The thing in the video, it wasn't me, but it looked like me, moved like me, and it had been inside my tent, watching me sleep. I packed up in a frenzy, barely able to think straight. I ran down the trail, my mind racing, that damn whistling still echoing in my ears. I needed to get out of those woods, away from whatever that thing was. I showed the footage to a friend when I got back, desperate for someone to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. But when I played the recording for them, the screen was blank. The file was corrupted. Nothing but static. Maybe it was stress. Maybe I was just losing my grip after days alone in the wilderness. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. That thing in the tent, it wasn't me. And now every time I close my eyes, I hear it. That low, haunting whistle, following me wherever I go. I'll never hike alone again.